The title of Grandpa Moves Out really got to me because I suddenly began to panic that Grandpa Lou was moving out. And I won't spoil what happens at the end of this episode, just in case you haven't seen it or you don't remember the ending. But I will say I did enjoy this episode quite a bit, and there were some really interesting bits of animation. This is the first segment of the 4th episode of the 3rd season of Rugrats, and it starts out with Stu and Didi in the kitchen doing some cooking, and Grandpa kind of gets in the way a bit, and he feels like he's not really appreciated, so he decides, after seeing an advert or a commercial for a retirement home, to move into this retirement home, and it was advertised as this really great place. But when Stu and Didi and Drew go to visit him, it's not exactly the luxury retirement home that it was made out to be. And everything seems very run down. The residents are, well, they're not as active as perhaps the retirement home advert made it seem like the community would be. And Grandpa Lou is still, putting on a brave face, saying, "This is my place now, this is where I am, you don't have to worry about me getting in the way." But clearly people just want him to leave. Whether or not he does, I'm not going to say. Meanwhile, for some selfish, ridiculous reason, children, or juvenile visitors as the receptionist called them, are not allowed to visit their grandparents, which seems like the most ridiculous rule ever, but it does facilitate the narrative, because Tommy and Angelica have to be babysat by this resident babysitter, this older woman, who shows them pictures of her grandchildren. And the grandchildren are named after 6 of the 7 dwarfs. And she forgets the name of the other. It's so well written. She forgets the name of the other one, and Angelica offers Sleepy as a suggestion for what we assume is the name of the 7th grandchild. And instead of realising it's the name of her grandchild, this babysitter thinks that Angelica is asking her if she's sleepy and says yes and decides to take a nap. And I thought that was a brilliant way to give Angelica and Tommy a chance to be on their own. It was just so cleverly written, because usually what happens is just that the adults' backs are turned and they escape that way. But this way it was just a little bit more entertaining and a little bit more, clever, a much better device than just the adults' backs were turned. I thought it worked very well. And off they go, and their mission is to wake up all the old people, because their philosophy is that if they wake the old people up and give them some coffee, they'll have the energy to play with their grandkids again and they'll go back home. Because obviously Tommy's missing his grandpa and he wants him to return home, and he figures other people, other children, might be missing their grandparents, so let's wake them all up. And off they go and try and do this, and it keeps cutting back between Angelica and Tommy and Lou and the other adults. And I think the editing is very good. The pacing of back and forth works really well. We didn't actually get to see that much of Tommy and Angelica, but I think that that's okay, because seeing the rest of the retirement home and the adults' reactions to things, it was quite funny and it worked very well. So I don't have any problem with that. And I thought it was a really entertaining episode. And we had some great animation. First of all, Tommy and Angelica are on an electric scooter whizzing down a corridor, and we have their point of view, and just the way that was animated was brilliant. But a second after that, we have the point of view of a wall, which sounds bizarre, but it works really well, because we're looking out the corridor as if we are the wall, and we see Didi and Drew running down the corridor to catch up with Tommy and Angelica, and then Stu runs up and smacks into a door, and that's why we're the perspective of the wall, so we can see that happening. And it was just very different, and not an angle we usually get with Rugrats, so I thought it was just a nice touch. But ultimately I thought it was a really nice narrative, some really funny moments, very well written, very well developed, great pacing, really nice editing between Tommy and Angelica and the adults. I thought everything worked well. Sure, I still don't think that it would have been realistic to say no child visitors, but the narrative probably wouldn't have worked as well if that hadn't been the case. So I understand the decision, even if it's a bit unrealistic. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good episode. Grandpa Lou is a great character. Definitely one that I'd be happy to watch again. I don't remember it. I've remembered quite a lot of Season 3 so far. I know we're only 4 episodes in, but a lot of Season 3 has come back to me. This isn't one of those episodes, but that's okay. I certainly enjoyed watching it now.